What's up, everybody? Hopefully you're having a good Friday. Better than mine's going so far. I'm getting my butt kicked right now. So I just opened up my model and realized that I lost all my progress on my UV maps. So quickly I'm going to run through this and do this, get the UVs reset up. Hello. Glad to see everybody. I'm sorry we had to do this online, but I don't I have pink eye and I have a cough. Excuse me. I'm gonna try to limit coughing into the mic. So I didn't want to get anybody sick, especially since we kind of do hands-on work where I'm coming to your machine and helping you out and stuff. So don't want to get anybody sick. Let me go through this real quick and just try to UV this as fast as I can here. Sometimes that happens. I think I might have sent myself the wrong file from the lab, which is annoying, but it is what it is. It happens. Hopefully y'all are surviving from the winter storm of the last decade. That was pretty intense. I haven't seen it snow like that since I was a little kid. And I've lived in Utah my whole life, so it hasn't snowed like that in a long time. For some of you, it's probably fun that aren't from the state, I would imagine. But I ended up shoveling all day. That might be why I'm sick, but who knows? See here. No speed model today. I don't. It's kind of silly to sit here like this for 30 minutes. You know, don't want to waste your time. So I'll delete the one that's set up for today. So we'll just jump right into what we're working on this week, which is going to be we're going to build a smart material together in Substance Painter. So wow, okay, let's go to something else here. Let's do this. Oh, unless actually I want to listen to that. Is it a lo-fi version of Guts' theme from Berserk? Okay, we'll take that. Cool. Unless it's gonna talk. I don't want to listen to music that's gonna talk. This is fine. Excuse me. Okay, get all this unfolded again. Basically have to do the same thing for this one again down here. Let's just take half of this. This is not what I was planning on doing the first few minutes of class, but sometimes that's how it goes. So, because hopefully you should all be done with this point of the project. If not, maybe this is a good refresher, but just get a couple of things unfolded here. Okay. Cool. That should be good now. For some reason, this one is not unfolded. What I think I'm going to do is just delete that, take this one, move it down. It can just be a mirror of whatever I do for that top one. Okay, cool. That's fine. Just be a duplicate of whatever I do for this. Do this here. It's fine. Okay. Let's get all this packed back in here again. It's kind of a fun lo-fi sound that's happening right now. Somebody thought the same thing right at the same time. Yeah, I can share it. It's just a no copyright tier list or a playlist on I don't even know how to share it. It's pretty good though. Share. Copy link to playlist. Let me put it in Discord. It's fairly chill. Here we go. I'll put it in the Discord for you guys. It's funny that somebody said that right when I was thinking the same thing. It's like, this is a pretty good little playlist. Okay, let's see. Move those for a minute. Try to throw this over here. I have nowhere to put any of this stuff. No speed model today. Nope. We're going to go straight into what we're doing today, which is doing a smart material in Substance Painter. But right as I realized I was going to export my model out at home, I realized I had destroyed my UV maps. So I'm just having to redo this quickly, which is proving to be a little more obnoxious than I wanted it to be, but that's okay. These really don't need to take up any space, but this could probably live in here. No, I'll delete it off canvas, so don't worry about that. Yep. No worries. It just seems a little silly for me to sit here for 30 minutes staring at my camera while you guys do something from home. So we'll just delete it for today. No worries. And the doing the sorry, my brain is a mess today. The smart material is a little intense, so I don't want to throw too much on your plate today. I'm gonna maximize as much of this as I can. Still have these two things to put in here. If I could move this somehow. If I do this. Yep, this will go up on Twitch. Or sorry, not Twitch. We're on YouTube. This will stay up on YouTube. So sorry, this is just taking a little bit longer than expected here. But I should be done in just a second. And then we'll get into Substance Painter. So just bear with me for 1 minute while we try to wrap this up here. Okay. So again, this is the part where we went through a little bit last week, but it would be good to have on video too, just so you guys can step through it, right? Now we're at the phase where we need to export this out again to get it back into Substance Painter, which most of you probably already did, hopefully. If you haven't, then follow along with these steps, right? So first thing I'm going to do is take my whole model here. Just double check all my stuff here and make sure it's looking good. UVs look good, right? Then I'm going to combine this and I'm going to export this out. So I'm going to go File, Export Selection, and I'm going to export it to the desktop as Sword Combined. Okay. So I'm going to export this out as an OBJ. It's going to take a second because my Maya on this machine is bugged. I need to delete it and reinstall it. When it decides to think for itself here in a second. Hopefully it doesn't crash on me. Excuse me, sorry. Come on, Maya, I believe in you. There we go. Okay. Now I'm gonna separate this And then I'm going to do that same step that I did in previously, where I'm going to expand off these parts away from each other here. Just every piece that's connected, I'm going to pull away from each other. Okay. Just get them all away from one another. Okay, so it's an exploded kind of view of the model here, right? And then I'm going to combine this again. And then I'm going to export this one out same way. Export selection. And I'm going to call this one Sword Exploded. Desktop. This is going to take a second too, so bear with me. Hopefully it doesn't throw a huge fit here, but it shouldn't. Looks like it's okay. Okay, so that looks like it should be exported. So now we can do our steps over again. So I'm going to move my asset tab. It looks like, actually, no, I'll leave it where it was. That's fine. Looks like this isn't the default, but remember that I've moved mine around a little bit. So I'm going to move myself maybe into the corner here, so I'm not over any windows. Let's see here. I just don't want to be blocking things. I can move myself up here, maybe. That's fine for now. Okay. So I'm going to go File, and I'm going to hit New, right? And we're going to grab... You can do the PBR Metallic Roughness base one. I'm going to grab this PBR Roughness Alpha Blend. This one just gives you a opacity and a emissive channel baked into the texture. So we'll do a 2048, and then anything else, we're good. I'm going to select the exploded version here. Hit Open. I'm going to hit OK. And that should pull in our exploded version of our sword, which is perfect. That's what we want. I'm going to change to 3D/2D here. Perfect. Okay. Then under texture set settings, I'm going to bake out all my maps here. So I'm going to go bake mesh maps. And then I'm going to use the high, the low as low poly as the high poly. And then I'm going to bake. I don't think this really, I mean, I think it still works the same way. But we're going to grab all of these maps here, bake these out. Okay. And then we're going to go to 2048. And let's bake these out. So I'll bake selected textures here. This should bake out all of our ambient occlusion stuff. Make sure that it's looking okay. Didn't throw us any errors, so that's good. Looks good. Okay. So now I'm going to go to my project configuration here, and I'm going to re-import the non-exploded version of this. So I'm going to go Edit, Project Configuration, and then I'm going to select the file, which is the non-exploded one, so just the sword combined. Hit Open. Uncheck Compute Tangent Space Per Fragment and uncheck Auto Unwrap, and I'm going to hit OK. And that should drop in the up-to-date version of the sword here, right? This looks good. This is what we want. Now we're in a space where we can start painting. And we talked about it last week. We talked about how you have all these different layers. We talked about how you can actually start painting directly on the sword itself, right? You can start painting with different channels. You can paint with color, height, roughness, metallic, normals. Now we have an opacity and an emissive that we can talk about in a little while here. Because what happens is you can start building a repository of smart materials as you start working. Like I have some stylized materials here that are pretty awesome. This is the one that we built last semester and the one I'm going to walk you through working on. Okay. So it's going to end up looking something like this, where it's going to give you these types of hard edges and things that it's going to play off of. So it just kind of gives a little bit of a stylized look to some of your to parts of your mesh, which is what you want, some of these sort of this edge wear that's happening. So we can step through kind of how to start approaching this, right? And it may not end up being used on every piece of your model here, but it gives you a good base layer to start working with, okay? So we're going to work through how this material works. There's quite a few layers here, and I'm going to step you through building this smart material. So let's undo this quickly. But the first thing we want to do is we're just going to grab a base layer for our whole project, right? So something to keep in mind is looking at your reference while you're working, right? So just for fun, let's pull up the reference here. All right. Let's pull up my reference. This is the wrong class. So we have this fun green texture happening. I don't really know what base to try to attack this with, but excuse me. Let's try. Maybe let's do it with the sort of brassy color here that's happening. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder. Okay. So I'm going to click the new folder right here. And inside this folder, now we can start adding layers inside this folder. So what I want to do is drop in a new fill layer inside of this folder. Okay. The way I did that was by clicking the little paint bucket right here. Okay. This is just adding a new fill layer. We're going to double click this and we're going to call this our base color. Okay. And we can actually go in here and click on base color and turn off everything except for color. Okay. Actually, we can have roughness and metal turned on too if we want. So let's just check off normal, opacity, emissive. We're going to do color, roughness, metal here. Okay. And we're going to turn off, we're going to pick a base color here. So I'm going to pick that kind of brassy color. That was the color of this thing that was happening. Okay. And you want this to be relatively dark, not the darkest layer that you have here, but relatively dark. Okay. So I'm going to pick this. Okay. Something like this. Perfect. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure that my roughness is turned down, right? Right now, this looks like a shiny piece of plastic. Okay. So I'm going to bump the roughness up here all the way to a 0.9. So I want this to be really matte, right? I don't want a ton of shine on this. So as I rotate the camera around, it's a fairly matte color that's happening here. This is how you help it not feel like a shiny plastic toy too. So So I'm going to do this really quick. So I did the roughness. My wife needs help taking a heavy box. So I'm going to pause for just 1 second and I'll be right back. Okay. Keep working on this, getting your layers set up, and I'll be right back. Thank you.
Most people nowadays say, I have no time. Of course you don't. Because you are not aware of the present. You know, the present is represented on your watch by a hairline that is as thin as possible as is consistent with visibility. And so everybody thinks the present is instead of now, the present is the only real time. There is no past. And there isn't a future. And there never will be.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. Might have lost a couple people, but that's okay. Hopefully they'll either join back in or watch it later down the line. Sorry. Okay, let's keep moving forward with this texture here. So we did the base color. Now, excuse me, we need to do another fill layer here, okay? So we're gonna grab another fill layer. We're gonna call this one edges, okay? So we're gonna double click this. We're gonna call this edges. We are gonna turn off of everything except for roughness, metallic, roughness, and color again, okay? So same thing, we're gonna grab similar color to the last color, a little bit darker shade, okay? So let's grab that same color. We can even color pick that color, and I'm gonna grab just a darker shade of it, okay? Doesn't necessarily have to be insanely darker, but just a little bit darker, okay? And then again here, I'm gonna take that same roughness level. I'm gonna bump that same roughness level back up to a 0.9 again here, okay? Don't want it to be shiny. Then this is where it's gonna get a little interesting, and we're actually gonna start using the power of Substance Painter here a little bit, okay? So we're gonna right click this here, and we are going to apply a black mask, okay? So we're gonna add a black mask here. If that's gonna work. Add a black mask. There we go. Okay. And this black mask needs to have a specific property assigned to it, okay? So we have the black mask. Now we need to right click and add a generator to this, okay? The generator looks like this little box with a circle cut out of the middle of it. So we're gonna add a generator here, not onto the paint, right? Make sure you're not adding the generator onto the paint. Make sure you're on the black mask, okay? And you're gonna add the generator to the black mask. And under the generator, you're gonna type in mask editor, okay? And it's gonna looks like a wrench with a box around it. Okay, and we're gonna drop that in. Quickly, you're gonna see that it's already starting to give you that edgeware look, right? Just with that mask editor. There's some things that we can tweak, but even this is starting to look fairly decent, right? Giving us a bit of edgeware on that material, right? If we turn that off, you can quickly see what that's doing for us, right? So now, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna mess with this a little bit here. So, a couple things that we can shift around in this is we can mess with the global contrast a little bit if you want. I didn't mind where it was at default, kind of with that fall off that was happening there. So you can bring this up and adjust this however much you want, right? If you want it to just be a really tight edge on there, or if you want it to have a little bit of a fall off, that's fine. So adjust it to wherever you feel it looks decent on your mesh, right? Something to check is just kind of looking around everywhere on here and making sure it's feeling okay, right? That looks pretty good to me. The other couple things we can mess with are the curvature opacity here. So you can play with how dark that edgeware actually is. Some cases, you know, you do want it to be that super harsh line, and that's okay. Other cases, you don't necessarily want it to be that harsh of a line, but that's up to you and your individual texture. The nice thing about building these smart materials is they're highly adjustable, right? So you can tweak it to however your model looks, right? My mesh may have a little bit different shape or different edges than yours does. Okay. So don't get too caught up on the exact number here, but play with the curvature opacity, play with the global contrast, and see how those look. Okay. And then that's it for that layer. Okay. Outside of, all right, that's it for that mask editor. The next thing we can do is apply a levels to this. Okay. So not a generator. There's another thing here that's called levels. Okay. And what we can do is invert that levels. And now you're seeing the thoughts come to fruition here. So we had the dark edgeware, but what we really wanted is to invert that so that we're getting that edgeware that's a little bit lighter, right? And what you can do is play with this levels too, right? You can adjust how this looks and feels as much as you want with this levels slider. So you can say, okay, I like that edgeware to be a little bit more rough around the edges. Something like this, right? So I'm adjusting that level down. Or I'm adjusting that level up, right? Or I can adjust the mid-range here and see exactly how I want that to feel. I can adjust the low end too, right? So I have a lot to play with here to tweak this to make this feel exactly how I want, right? So play with this levels until you feel like you get something that you like here, right? Right now that's feeling pretty good to me. There might be a little bit of work to adjust here. But remember, this material doesn't have to go on every one of your objects. So you can build multiple versions of this same smart material if you want. But what I really want it to shine is on a couple of these pieces here. So this is where you could get back into that mask editor, adjust that global balance, right? And that curvature opacity. And just see exactly how you want that to look. Okay. So that's feeling pretty good right now. I may jump back in here. Perfect. Okay. So we've built this up, right? This is feeling pretty good. There's another thing we can add here, which is called a sharpen if we wanted to. So we can add a sharpen to this. So under add filter right here, and then we can take this filter and type in sharpen. This just does is tries to intensify what's happening, right? So it's kind of hard to see, but see how there's a little bit of a fall off there? What this does is it can either smooth that out if you want it to be a little more feathered, or if you want to really intensify those lines, right? You can build this, you can put this sharpen in. So that's up to you. I can put it in, I could take it out, I could take it or leave it at this point. It's fine. So you can decide, but I'm just showing you that there is another option there. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is build our cavities. And what this is going to do is fill in some of these, darker spaces here for us and hopefully help us out a little bit. Okay. So let's go ahead and add a new fill layer again over the top of this one. Okay. And we're going to call this one cavities. Okay. Same thing here with the cavity map. We're only going to have color. We don't need to have the roughness or metallic just color here. Okay. And we're going to grab a darker shade of that same color again. So we're going to grab that one, and we're going to grab a darker shade of this. Okay. All right. And then we're going to do something similar again. Okay. We're going to run that same cavity map or that same mask editor again. Okay. So we're going to throw a generator over the top of this. Okay. And that generator, we're going to grab this and we're going to call this. Actually, sorry, I lied to you. Messed that up. We need to add another another black mask. Let's add a black mask, and then we'll add a generator to the black mask. Okay. Similar to how we did this last one. Same thing here. Just going to grab mask editor again. And this mask editor we're going to use to help fill in some of the cavities. Okay. So there's some settings we need to mess with here on this one to help us get there. So texture opacity here, we're going to bump up. We're going to start messing with this a little bit. And you can see it starts to affect the darkness or lightness of this object overall. So I'm going to bump this up somewhere around a 0.6. I think the darker you make this, the more it kind of overpowers your whole model. So I'm going to bump it up to around that level. Okay. Under texture 2, I mean, we can mess with the global balance too. So we could bring that global balance down overall. Somewhere in this range. And then on texture opacity 2, we need to bump this one up as well. So we're going to take that opacity up again to a 0.6 somewhere. And then the ambient occlusion opacity we're going to bring up here. And then, let's see. I just want to make sure this is doing what I think it's doing here. I don't feel like it's working properly. Did it break on me? Feels like it's breaking. Not doing exactly what I want it to do here. Let's see. It was working for a second there. Now it stopped. Take this back down. Contrast should be 0. It should be coming down. Curvature opacity. Oh, there we go. Okay, now it's working. So now I can bump this up. That's better. So I can turn off the ambient occlusion opacity. Okay, so now you can see what it's doing. See how it's adding a little bit of shading in between those? That's what I wanted it to do. Don't want it to do too much though. I don't want it to make a super dark edge in there. That's okay. All right. Cool. So that's functioning now. And that's it for the cavity map. And like I said, you can mess with this as much as you want. It looks like that curvature opacity is really what's going to adjust that how you want. And the ambient occlusion opacity. So you can play with those as much as you want. Okay. And you could go in and paint this yourself too. I get too nuts with that. Position gradient, thickness, opacity. That just starts to muddy it up too much. Okay. And that's not going to do much to it there. Okay, cool. So now that we've done that, a couple more layers here to go through, okay? The next thing I want to go through here is some layers of color variation, okay? So when we have this happening here, what we want is we don't want it to just sit there as a stale single color, right? So sometimes what you can do is take a look at your take a look at your overall mesh here, or your overall reference, and you can see here that there's like some reds in here and even a little bit of a green that's happening on this to help make this color not just a standard tan, right? So let's go ahead and add some of that in here. And when we add these layers, it can help with that, okay? So I'm going to add another fill layer. Let's go here above the cavities. We're going to add another fill layer. And we're going to turn this to just color, okay? So we can pick that color. So I'm going to do like a red here. Doesn't need to be that crazy of a red, or maybe like an orange. A red orange. And then I need to add a couple layers here. So I'm going to turn this into a light layer, or add a light generator to this. Okay. But let's add a levels to it as well. So let's add a levels. And we're going to adjust that levels down. Okay. And then we're going to turn this into a light by adding a light to this as well. We're going to add a light generator. So we'll go to generator. And again, this is just going to be color. We'll add a generator. We're going to call this light. Okay. Hopefully we can get this to work properly. Let's go to true. Choose normal light attenuation. Take the highlight off of there. It should just be color. And this should be working properly. Curious if this is because we're in the this should not be causing this big of a problem here. Like, it should be a light, and that's fine. It's not recognizing the color. Should be 90. 90. It's not recognizing my color. Let's set this to, instead of normal, let's set it to divide. Now it's grabbing the color. Perfect. Okay, awesome. So make sure you set the light piece here to divide. I forgot that. So it shouldn't be set to normal, set it to divide. Now it's grabbing the right color. And then you can adjust this as much as you want, right? So we can have as much red light shining on our object as we want here. So let's grab a little bit there. Don't need a ton. What that's doing is just adding a little bit of color variation in there, right? Now it's not just tan, we got some reds in here too, which is good. And we could adjust this. We could say it doesn't necessarily need to be on a 90. We could adjust this however we want, wherever we want that red to show up. But for right now, we'll just leave it at 90. Once we get the other ones in there, we can kind of make that decision. So for right now, that's good. Now, the next thing we're going to do another, and you can play the levels too here. You could adjust this as much as you want. You could say, okay, how much red do I actually want in here? How much do I want this to play off the surface, right? It's really kind of messing some stuff up when I do that, right? So you can adjust and play with that levels as much as you'd like. You can really say, okay, I only want it to affect it a little bit or a lot, right? Depending on where you bring that levels to, okay? So mess with that. That's what it's there for. The sliders are there for you to adjust based off of each one of your own models, okay? So, perfect. The next thing we need to do here is we're going to add another color variation on top of it. It's going to be another fill layer, okay? So one more fill layer over the top of this. So we're going to call this first one color variation. And then we're going to add another fill layer. So we've added quite a few fill layers to this point, but that's okay. We're just slowly building this material up until we can use it everywhere, right? So this next one we're going to call color variation 2. So we'll say color variation 2. And you could add as many of these as you want. I mean, you could put more and more lights on this. But I'm just going to do 2 for now. So again, we're going to drop this down and just let this be a normal height, metal, and roughness layer here. Okay. And we're going to jump this up to a 0.9 again. because again, I don't want it to be shiny on the roughness. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to take this and add, so I'm going to pick the color. So we did a red. Now let's do a little kind of a green here. Okay. And so now I'm going to take this. Again, add a light to this, so it's a generator. Again, this is just going to be color. Add a light generator to this. It actually doesn't need any of this here. So just a color, okay? And then I'm going to set this to 270 here for now. It's going to shine from the top. The other one was shining from the bottom. This one's shining from the top, okay? And then we need to set this, instead of normal, we're going to set it to overlay, okay? So now we have this green happening here. And we can turn that down too, right? So now you can see we have that nice green tint happening there as well. So we're going to turn all this down here. So we have some nice color variation happening to this material now, right? It's not just one sort of color sitting there. This piece has these multiple colors being worked into it, which is nice, right? This is what we want. We don't just want one flat color. We have, you know, we want to make sure this feels real and makes sense, right? So that's working now. And again, now that we have this set, I could change this color to whatever I want, right? So let's say I want it to be more, you know, stylized, a little more lime green, or maybe I need it to be less noticeable, less saturated, right? Maybe a green more like this, right? We can adjust, which is good. Okay. And again, you can mess with that. How much is there? As much as you want. So we'll keep that at like an 8 right now. And that's feeling pretty good. Okay. All right. So now there's really not a ton left to do here. You know, we have some things we could do inside of the cavity map to make it feel a little bit better. We could grab some rust or grunge to help kind of break up some of the monotony. So inside of the mask editor on the cavity map, we can grab some of these things here. So we could say under the image input, we could grab a texture and say, let's grab grunge, rust, fine, or something. There's a ton of these, right? And this is one that I've used in the past. So that just kind of throws a little bit of a surface distortion on there, which kind of, it just helps. And you can adjust that as much as you want, right? How much surface distortion is happening. Just kind of helps break that up. .5, I think, is where the base is. That feels pretty good. And then we could grab another texture here and do another grunge. Do grunge, rust, dirty. I think there's another, a rough dirty, I think is what it's called. Rough dirty. You can mess with all of these. So that throws in another, that just throws in another layer here to play with. You can just see what that does. Kind of just breaks up that, gives a little bit of surfaced texture to your paint. Just helps it feel nicer. Okay. So, gone through there and broke up some of that there. Nothing crazy to do there left. Now I want to add, you know, a little bit more surface stuff here, okay? And then we can add in some baked lighting. And some dirt, okay? So let's see here. So what I want to do is we're going to add sort of a dirt layer here. And so what I want to do is I'm going to grab one more fill layer. We're going to put that at the top of our list here, over the top of this last color variation we did. And we're just going to call this dirt or something. You can call it whatever. Or distortion or something. I don't care. I really don't care what you call it. I don't want to get too caught up in that. But just know that this is another sort of surface distortion layer. Okay. So this one is just going to be a color layer. And I'm going to grab a darker brown or something here. And then I'm going to add a white mask to this. Okay. And we'll talk about the difference between white mask and black mask isn't crazy. White mask, what happens is it applies it everywhere and then you paint where you don't want it. Black mask doesn't apply it and then you just paint where you want it, if that makes sense. So white mask. And then we're going to apply a generator to this white mask. Okay. And we are going to apply a dirt generator. So we're going to type in dirt here. Okay. And you're going to see that it's just going to throw kind of a gross layer of dirt over the top of everything here, which is not necessarily what you want, but what you can do is dial this back to where it's not so egregious, right? You can say, okay, maybe I don't need this level of dirt here, or maybe I don't need it to be this shade, right? I could change the color. But what we can do is drop that grunge scale down. We can change the amount of grunge that's happening, right? And then we can change, you know, there's some other things we can change. The edge masking, we could drop down a little bit. And what this does is it's just going to kind of avoid it. You can play with this too. Okay. And then you can change the dirt level, right? So you can say how much you want. We could leave it at 0.75. The thing that I want to do here is, you know, I don't necessarily want this level of dirt on here, or maybe I just want to change the color. So maybe I say, maybe I actually want this to be a lighter shade or something. I'm just trying to break up the surface level here and not give it such a harsh change, but say, okay, let's break up that surface monotony a little bit there. You know, you can really play with how this works, right? Maybe something there feels good to me. Okay. And again, you can adjust this as much as you want, right? Per your project. So you could even change how that scale looks to you, where that feels right on your object. Maybe you like this better and that feels better to you. Right. So play with that. And that is the last outside. I think there's one more layer here, and it's a baked lighting layer. So we are going to throw in one more fill layer. And we're going to call this baked lighting. Okay. Just adding one more layer of lighting to this object, right? We're trying to cheat as much as we can so we don't have to sit here and paint in shadows and highlights as much as possible, right? So we're going to keep this pretty standard across the board. I do want to drop the roughness. I don't want it to be shiny, so I'm going to change this to a 0.9. Okay. In reality, this could probably not be emissive or norm. It probably could just be a color layer. We'll see here in just a second. So let's add a filter. Okay. And we're going to call this filter baked lighting. Okay. We're going to grab baked lighting. And there's two different ones here. We want the baked lighting stylized. So we're going to grab that. And it's just going to give us a little bit of a shading layer here. We can turn off all this stuff probably. And then nothing needs to change under material. Under sun sky, we can change this to 270. Have it shine down from the top. Okay. And I don't think anything else really needs to change here. Light 1 doesn't need to change. Light 2 doesn't necessarily need to change. The rest of those are okay. And then I think what we can do is just start changing this here and adjusting this down. So this really does not need to be a ton. And I think we can change this to light, like a soft light. Perfect. And that's just going to shine on our object a little bit there. Hard light you could do, but it kind of, I don't love what it's doing there with the hard light. You can kind of see it. I just don't love it. Maybe if it were changed a little bit. Maybe if this was just a color layer. I don't know. Play with this. This is okay. Use this bake lighting and see how you want that to work. That's shining way too bright right there, which I don't like. Linear light's probably too much. So if we do a soft light, I kind of like what's happening there. But I don't need it to shine too much. So that should be the last layer there. And then what I want to call this, so mess with that, right? See how that just kind of brightens it up a little bit at the top. Doesn't need to be insane. Just giving us a little bit more lighting on that layer. Okay, perfect. And the dirt level here, you can also adjust if you wanted to. You could definitely change the level of that dirt. Like, I don't want it to lighten up my whole scene, right? But or darken up the whole scene. But it's given that material enough of a enough of a surface distortion to feel good. Okay. All right. So now that we have that material, then the last step, right? We can close up our folder. What I want to do is name this folder. I'm going to call this sword stylized material. Okay. Then you can right click this folder, and what you can do is you can say create smart material right here, and it will add it to your repository of smart materials. So now you'll see that that sword smart material is everywhere, which is awesome, right? Now we can start using this all over the place, because the nice thing here is I can say, all right, this stylized material that I'm using here, I want to add a mask to this. And I only want to apply that material to where I either paint, right? I can paint with that material, or I can fill polygons with that material, which means I can fill total chunks with that material, right? Which is super cool. So I can say, look, you know, I want to fill this, right, with that material. And I can adjust that as much as I want. But now I can go in and start saying, okay, well, now I need another material here. Now I need another smart material. So I could add another one here. And I could say, this is for the rings. Maybe I change the name of this layer, which I can after the fact. So I could say rings. And then I could take this one and I could add a black mask to this. And I could apply it to, let's apply it to this part of the handle, right? I could use the UV chunk, or I could use actual faces here and say, I just want to apply it to this piece, right? And now, because I've got my reference, right, I could say, all right, let's build the leather piece here, right? So I come back over here and I open up this folder, and now I have all these layers built in and customized to what I'm doing already, right? So I come down to the base color and I say, all right, well, the base color of that handle is actually dark blue, right? So I change it to that dark blue, right? Again, it doesn't need to be a crazy dark, but then I start coming in, right? Remember, the edges needed to be a little bit darker than that color. So I grab another dark blue that's a little bit darker, right? And I grab the cavities that's a little bit darker color than that, right? And I just start messing with these layers until I get to the point that it starts working, right? And the things, we have that color variation on there. So that's why it's showing up as purple. But that means we could get in there with those color variations and adjust those too, right? But that dirt could change to a different color on this piece. We could set that to like a dark blue, or even a white, like depending on what you want, how you want that to work, right? Maybe you want that shading there, so you set it to a much darker color. Again, remember that color variation is sitting over the top of this too. So that's why you're getting that green. So you might need to adjust what's happening with that too. But you can take a look at your overall material and continue working with it. So that's what's so nice about this smart material, is we've done so much work. Now we just need to adjust individual pieces, and we start having, you know, a scene with a weapon that's starting to flesh out really easily. And we can get into more, you can even get into more crazy smart materials. This is another one that I built. That's a crystal. That's a smart material that I could apply here, right? Since the top of that sword is sort of a crystal-y color, and I could apply, you know, a mask to that one and just apply it to the crystal parts of my sword. Right? Granted, this is a little bit different, so I'd need to adjust. But I have that crystal material that I can work with and start using, right? So this crystal material has a couple different things built into it here, where I've got a top and a bottom glow that I can mess with. and I can adjust where certain things sit, right? You know, that sword is a little bit different. All right, and now I'm starting to get into how that sword looks in my reference, right? So I'm quickly working through pretty easily what's going on here, right? So these smart materials can do all different kinds of things for you pretty quickly and very easily, which is nice. There's obviously some more work that needs to go into this piece here. Like I could start painting in some more detail in some of these areas, right? And maybe this ring piece needs to be lightened up a little bit. Like looking at my thing, there's some edges that need some highlights here. But the nice thing is we've built that base with these smart materials that we can now start adding in some things over the top. We can add layers over the top. We can add paint layers that just sit over the top of this that we can start painting directly onto the mesh with, right? Over the top of these smart materials and adding certain things in. They don't necessarily have to be color too. Like let's say I need to paint in some height stuff onto this, right? And I need it to be punched in, right? I need to do some runes or something in this, which I think we talked about last time, right? And maybe it does have a color assigned to it. And you've got, you know, some runes that sit in this thing, and maybe it has an emissive color too, where you have something happening where that rune has an emissive to it, right? So you're painting with a rune that has an emissive, right? Into this sword. And I don't know what I'm painting, right? But so with Polygon Fill, the smart material, the way you use it is you need to grab your smart material, right? And then you need to right click the whole folder and apply a black mask to that folder. And then you can start adding those things in, right? So next week, I think what we have, you have your final thing done, but next week in the class, I want you guys to just kind of get in paint and build the smart material. So next week for class, what I want to do, because next Friday is March 3rd, that's when your renders due. Next week, we'll talk about how to actually set up your scene and then render out your final image. And that will be the last sort of class lab for this assignment, okay? Because what we're going to do is set up your display and how it actually renders, right? Because you can actually select different scenes and things for your object to be rendered in, and it can really change how that material starts to play out, right? And how it feels, which is good, but we'll talk more about that next class. Again, this is another one of those classes where I didn't want to throw... The smart material is pretty intense, so you might need to re-watch back this video a couple times to get that smart material built properly, right? May take you a couple seconds to figure out exactly what's going on, and that's okay. That's kind of the idea, is it's almost helpful sometimes when we do these more intense things online, because then there's a video for you to scrub back and forth through and say, okay, what did Chase do there? Right? Because in that smart material, it's pretty powerful and works really well throughout the whole project. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers that we kind of work through. Okay. So take a minute, grab a cup of coffee, do whatever you need to do. I'm going to call it for today. It's 4:30. I don't want to go nuts for another hour. I'll work on this some more. And I can keep painting, but I want you guys to work. And we've been live for an hour and a half. So I will let you guys work. Okay. And then next class we'll go through, I'll keep painting, and maybe tomorrow night. If I have time, I'll put up a video of me painting the rest of my sword. If I don't have time to paint the sword, I do have a video of me painting this one and going through, working through this scythe. You guys, it's same process, right? You can see this is just the one I picked last semester. So, but that's okay. So I want you guys to work. I'm going to let you guys go. Hopefully this was informative. I feel like it was. Building smart materials is a super powerful thing. Maybe I'll link a couple good videos and tutorials. Maybe the tutorial to this crystal material would be good. The crystal material is one I did based off of a tutorial. So maybe what I'll do is I'll link that tutorial to y'all. Because it's pretty simple. It's not a very tough material to build. It's 3 layers. So I'll link you that vid. I'll put the video in the Discord. It would be a good one for you guys to go through. Okay. Sound good? It's not a hard material to build. It's there's a base paint layer and then a couple of emissive layers. So nothing too crazy. Okay. All right, everybody. I will see you all next week. Okay. Have a good one. I'm going to try to feel better here, and I will see you all soon. Okay. See you guys.